We are those guys. We hope to be your guys. I'm Alex Hardy, joined as always as Nick Ferguson. Nick, this is the last episode that we have for our audience before the 2024 NFL Draft. What do you have to say? I mean, we've come such a long way.
Yeah, it's finally here, and I'm glad that we're only a couple of days out. Once this happens, now we can move on to the real business of football and start talking about OTAs and mini camps and which of these rookies who are drafted would actually find themselves being a starter for the upcoming season. But let's get started, man. I'm excited.
Oh, ye of little faith. We can do our draft grades episode. We can talk about value and who's already a bust before they play a single snap in the NFL. I mean, it's the gift that keeps on giving. That's how the National Football League works.
What do you mean, who's a bust? I mean, how can we jump right from the evaluation process to the draft itself and days later go, well, this guy's going to be a bust, this guy's going to be a bust? We haven't even taken the snap yet.
Okay. Is your calculation more like give them 3 years and see what happens?
Absolutely, because...
Okay. No, okay. Don't even, because 3 years is the perfect amount of time the New York Jets needed to decide before they realized that Zach Wilson was a bust. And now Zach Wilson will start here, Nick, because your Denver Broncos have acquired a quarterback. The former number 2 pick in the 2021 draft gets swapped for essentially 50 spots in the draft. The Jets will get number 203 from Denver. Denver sliding down to the top of the 7th round, number 256, while allowing the Jets to sort of eat some of that money. Obviously, that being a concern because the Broncos are more interested in paying quarterbacks that are not on the roster. So, Nick, your immediate reaction to a Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham QB battle coming to Denver, Colorado?
Well, I like it for one, and I'm going to back up for a second because you, like so many others, talk about Zach Wilson not really showing his level of production based on his draft status with the Jets. When you think about Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, what didn't happen? What didn't happen was a collective that really put everything they could behind their quarterback. And here's what I mean. When a young quarterback comes in, I don't care if it's Trey Lance, Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, it's a learning curve that you go through, and you have to ease guys into the mix. I don't believe Zach Wilson was eased into the mix because the Jets had made several bad choices at the quarterback position. They were trying to rush this because they were still chasing the Giants. The Giants have been to Super Bowls. They've been to 2. The last time the Jets appeared in one, Joe Willie Namath was playing against the Colts. So it's been a long time. And Mike LaFleur, who I worked with in San Francisco, great guy. But to me, I mean, he had too much on his plate trying to be an offensive coordinator for the first year. So think about that. A young offensive coordinator mixed with a young quarterback did not work out for Zach Wilson. Then they thought, you know what? We got to go get Nathaniel Hackett because we want Aaron Rodgers. Let's be totally honest. Nathaniel Hackett is a cool guy. He loves Star Wars just like I do. Well, we know who runs the show with the New York Jets, even with the Green Bay Packers. It was Aaron Rodgers. So when you think about that, that offense was never catered to the skill set of Zach Wilson. So the idea, and this is me putting my GM hat on.
There you go.
Here's what George Payton and Sean Payton were probably thinking. We're already paying another quarterback $38 million to be on another roster, right? So we're going to take on Zach Wilson, or we want to make sure that the Jets are eating some of that salary. And also we get a young quarterback who Sean Payton feels that he can mold, where he felt as though, well, Russell was a veteran quarterback and didn't do what he wanted him to do. This guy is going to do it because he has no choice. And I'll add this bonus to it. Both Sean Payton and Zach Wilson have something to prove. Zach has to prove that he can live up to his draft status. Sean has to prove that he can win without Drew Brees and develop a quarterback, something he has never done. So I like it because I get a chance to sit back and watch it all unfold.
So why I don't think Zach Wilson worked necessarily with the New York Jets absolutely has to do with roster construction. And Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh entering year 4 after whiffing on their quarterback selection. Hey, Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, those are nice picks. But if you miss on that number 2 quarterback, you force yourself down the road where Aaron Rodgers is the one to lead you to the promised land. Hopefully. He played 4 snaps last year. And Zach Wilson, I think, was set up to fail in 2021 because of that quarterback room. There were 0 combined starts for what was presumed to be a guy that showing 1 year of success at BYU, albeit in a COVID-stricken season, where the best tape we have for Zach Wilson is playing Coastal Carolina. And now all of a sudden you're asking him to lead an NFL position room and lead a starved New York fan base. Speaking of Joe Willie Namath, the last winner that they really had at that position. So now in Denver, you've got Zach Wilson as the more experienced guy. 33 starts under his belt compared to just 4 for Jarrett Stidham. This is going to dovetail nicely, because I'm very good at what I do, Nick, into our larger conversation for this podcast. Zach Wilson, Jarrett Stidham, are the Broncos in need of adding a rookie quarterback into this room moving forward?
Absolutely. I mean, most people think that when they heard about the trade for Zach Wilson, oh my God, the sky's falling. Zach Wilson's going to be our quarterback of the future.
Yeah.
Not so fast, because, I mean, we are fastly approaching that 50th option for Zach Wilson. So the Broncos get a chance to kick the tires on Zach Wilson and see if he can be that guy. Now, it's a low risk, high reward type of situation with the Zach Wilson, but I still feel that the Broncos will, in fact, draft a quarterback in this upcoming draft. Now, that means that with this move with Zach Wilson, the Broncos don't have to panic. They're fielding all types of phone calls for people who want to move up. And trust me, there are people who want to move up. So
to 12?
To move up to 12. And the Broncos don't have a second round pick. Their next pick after the first round is not until the 3rd round. By that time, some of the premier talent will be gone. So
76 overall.
Yeah. Why don't you move back, get a second pick? You're still in the 1st round. And oh, by the way, you still can get your quarterback. You still can get your edge rusher. You still can get a wide receiver and an offensive lineman, and still come out of this draft with a little bit of hope. And all Zach Wilson gives you competition inside the quarterback room, because Sean Payton told us, I was standing at the podium when he told us, Russ is being benched because they need a spark from Jarrett Stidham. We saw 2 games of Jarrett Stidham. It seemed like this is kind of an ongoing story for Jarrett Stidham, is it not? But the point is that Jarrett Stidham wasn't the spark that Sean Payton thought or wanted him to be. And he finally realizes it. This move with Zach Wilson puts competition in that room, but also tells us, well, not me, but Jarrett Stidham, that your spot on the team isn't safe as you thought it was once upon a time.
Right. It's one thing to compete against an incoming rookie, but with the 3 quarterbacks that they have, Wilson now, Stidham, and Ben DiNucci, shout out those Dallas Cowboys, it's ripe to add some youth to that position group, even though Zach Wilson is just about the same age as some of these 5th and 6th year quarterback prospects that we have coming up in the NFL draft. So tomorrow, Thursday, is the first round of the draft, Nick. And before we dive in deeper, listen, we've had 1 quarterback class in NFL history produce 6 first-round draft picks. 1983, 6 of 28 first-round selections were quarterbacks, and 3 of them were Hall of Famers in Dan Marino, Jim Kelly, and why is the 3rd one escaping me? Hey, Nick, want to play some trivia? Who is the 3rd one?
Who is the 3rd? It was Jim Kelly, Dan Marino. I'm thinking, well, I don't know why I'm thinking Boomer Esiason, but Boomer Esiason was not a Hall
first overall pick.
I don't know. I'm thinking Troy. Was it? No, Troy Aikman came after, but I'm thinking Troy Aikman. For some
here's a hint. Here's a selection.
John
Elway. There he is.
John Elway.
There's Nick Ferguson joining us from Denver, Colorado, for getting Baltimore Colts selection, John Elway in 1983. Are we going to see 6 quarterbacks in the first round this time around in 2024? We have 32 picks.
Well, we could see that, because we know there's a high premium put on those quarterbacks, and every year it dominates the conversation. That doesn't necessarily mean that all of those guys, like you listen to the history of the quarterback draft, all those guys are going to hit, right?
Mhm.
Will Sison was in that draft when those quarterbacks were drafted in '83. Did he have a decent career? Yes. But did he have a Hall of Fame career like some of those other guys? Absolutely not. So you're going to see desperation from a lot of teams moving up to try to select guys. Even there's some teams have been said who we know need quarterbacks who are now considering moving out, or at least they say, well, they're fielding phone calls. That team in New England, yes, they're taking phone calls. So if you want to call Gerard Mayo and tell them, hey, man, go get the next Tom Brady, and his name is J.J. McCarthy, I don't think they have a problem with that.
Yeah, well, we go back to 2021, and we started our podcast talking about Zach Wilson, of 5 first-round quarterbacks, including the top 3 picks. Only Trevor Lawrence, 101, is left with his original team. Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones all on the move. So it's hard to say that, we can draft that many. Will they all work out? It's almost a statistical anomaly that it ever could, let alone this one will in particular. We can spend a lot of time breaking down each of the prospects and which quarterbacks we like. But Nick, I want you to identify some quarterback needy teams atop the draft. I think we can write off Chicago and Caleb Williams for first overall. I don't know, maybe you're interested in who you might pair with Caleb with that number 9 selection. But looking at Washington, New England, maybe the Giants at 6. Then you've got that cluster, including your Broncos, Minnesota, Denver, Vegas, 11, 12, 13. And other teams that may be on the hunt for a quarterback. I mean, which kind of teams stand out to you, and maybe the type of fit? Because we're debating the likes of a barely 21-year-old J.J. McCarthy, who's a true junior coming off a national championship, versus the likes of Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, that are all 23 years old, 5-6 years of college experience.
Well, first, I'm going to go with your New England Patriots because it's been proven after Tom Brady bolted and won a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, that organization hasn't really been the same. And we were always talking about which came first, the chicken or the egg. Was it Bill Belichick or Tom Brady?
Right.
So Belichick is no longer in the fold. That organization is used to winning, even before Tom. You know this. There was Drew Bledsoe. So they're trying to get back to their winning ways. And oh, by the way, they happen to be in a division that has a bunch of talented quarterbacks. So if they don't get their guy now and make sure they get it right, this could be a long 20 years. Steve Grogan with the neck roll for the Patriots, type of situation. So that is a team of all the teams, that is one of those teams that I figure that they definitely have to get it right based on the tradition that Patriots fans have been used to, or shall I say, spoiled for the past 20 odd years.
President of football operations / GM / editor for Bill Belichick, but was never really given a title, Elliot Wolf, said the Patriots are, quote, open for business with the 3rd overall selection. I know you are a Jaden Daniels guy, so according to Nick Ferguson, the Commanders better make the right selection, taking Jaden Daniels at 2. You are a lot lower on Drake May than most. So if it's up to New England, Drake May, or seek out a trade, maybe that's moving down with Minnesota that wants to come up from 11. I guess I'm wondering, you're saying on the one hand, the Patriots need to come out with their quarterback. On the other hand, Drake may be the only guy there. Would you encourage New England to trade down? Is there a team that can come up, whether that's Minnesota or the Giants, or, a team picking later on in the first round that you say, well, the Patriots need a quarterback, but they may not have the infrastructure for the likes of a Drake May. Can you identify a team that's able to come up, or maybe fortunate enough to, let's say the Giants stay at 6 and Drake May falls to them? Is there a team maybe other than New England that you think Drake May, a guy you're not in love with, would be a better fit for?
Yeah, Drake May would be a great fit in Giants uniform, but also in Minnesota. But it comes back to this whole idea of what type of offense are you going to run? Are you set up to make sure that rookie quarterback is going to be great in the next 3 to 5, and maybe even in 10 years? And the first team I look at the Minnesota Vikings. With Kevin O'Connell, he's had success as a quarterback coach. He has some success as a play caller with Kirk Cousins. So he's been around the block. He's been with Sean McVay. They've gone to Super Bowl, so he knows how to build. But no, by the way, they have two talented wide receivers. They have a talented tight end. And they also brought over Aaron Jones from the Green Bay Packers.
Mhm.
So that would be a great fit for a young quarterback like a Drake May to fit in because, in this situation, Minnesota, in my opinion, holds a lot of cards. How far do they go up? What do they want to do? I mean, that would be the ideal team to move up in that position that's currently held by the New England Patriots. But the Giants, yeah. Do they want to move up? Absolutely. Can they move up? Yes, they can. But do they have everything they need to support a young quarterback? Because here's what I want you to keep in mind, and the listeners too as well. When you play in New York City, that is an A market. And that means that when I give the A, you can add the other part as far as how the fan base feel if you don't play well, right? Because they are used to winning all the time. And you thrust a young quarterback in that situation, man, you wreck his confidence and you destroy it. So I would like to see, for the sake of the player themselves, I would like to see Minnesota move up and take maybe a J.J. McCarthy or a Drake May. And then maybe a Drake may fall maybe to a Denver Broncos, maybe to the Raiders, teams that have some weapons to at least make that player a better player. But I wouldn't want any of these young quarterbacks to go to New York. The media is brutal. The fan base is brutal. You don't win, they coming for your throat.
No, we mentioned previously on this podcast that Daniel Jones and Drew Lock are both slated to play games because of the injury guarantee that Daniel Jones has and his long history of injuries. We're going to see Drew Lock playing at a certain point. So a developmental guy, whether that's Drake May or J.J. McCarthy, maybe we're not saying that of a Caleb Williams or a Jaden Daniels based on their experience at the collegiate level. It just goes to my logic where we're kind of projecting what both of these guys can be. I know Drake May was one of the least accurate quarterbacks in a clean pocket in college football last year, and some of those accuracy concerns and the hero ball he might have been playing. Hey, we watched him throw a left-handed touchdown, but it doesn't always work out that way. Where J.J. McCarthy, meanwhile, in 3 more starts last year, had nearly 100 less attempts throwing the football. So, hey, we see accuracy, we see good footwork, but we see it on a smaller sample size. It's a projection that a team like Minnesota that wants to have a Shanahan-style quarterback, like we can project a J.J. McCarthy versus Drake May, who's more toolsy, is what makes this evaluation process fun and rewarding once we see these guys hit the football field. Nick, before we wrap for the NFL draft, I noticed that you didn't mention the fact that I'm not wearing a hat for the first time. Nick, before we split, I'm not wearing a hat because my wife told me my hair looks great. So advice for myself or any of our podcast audience, Nick, when you've got a compliment coming in your direction from your significant other, your spouse, your partner, how do you take that in stride? Do you just accept it for what it is? Do you thank them for pointing things out? My first instinct was to put a hat right on because that's what we do on the podcast. But your thoughts on giving and receiving compliments from those you care about the most?
Hey, listen, I take them. I embrace whatever compliments that I can receive. And sometimes there may be some cold sometimes in the compliments that are provided to us.
That's called backhand.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it all depends on what it is. But if your wife is telling you don't wear a hat because she loves your hair, you got to go ahead and listen to that, right? That's better than doing the opposite. Just like if a coach tells me when the ball is up in the cylinder, grab it and dunk it, then that's what you do. If your coach tells you when Jamal Murray has the ball, Anthony Davis, you have to make sure that you get your hands enough in his face to make sure that he can't knock down the game winner. That's all it is. It's just compliments and validation. And look, like I said before, I'm going to take every single one I can get, because we live in a world, Alex, which you know, that those validations, they are slow like a tortoise.
Get ready for a weekend chock full of positive validation. The NFL draft, we will be with you Friday evening into Saturday morning, recapping the first 3 rounds in the draft, what quarterbacks either your team or our teams pick up in the first 3 rounds. We're so pumped, and we're just thrilled that you're spending this journey with us here on Those Guys. He's Nick Ferguson. I'm Alex Hardy. We will catch you to recap the early rounds of the draft. And until then, Nick Ferguson, what do you have for the people?
Hey, go Broncos.
Let's ride.
No, you cannot.